British economy facing a national debt in excess of £2 trillion, with the borrowing that is now actually costing us, I think, interest debt alone is 80 billion a year, inflation running at over 6%, and with the British people in the grip of an unprecedented cost of living crisis, here's today's big question. Is Britain broke? With Vladimir Putin pursuing an expensive and devastating war in Ukraine, pumping up energy prices, what is the economic outlook for Britain? Are the fundamental basis of the British economy such that we will navigate our way out of this crisis, or are we in serious trouble? Should the Chancellor Rishi Sunak borrow even more money to help hard-up Brits? To debate this, I'm delighted to welcome economist, chartered financial planner and presenter of the Booms and Busts podcast, Jonathan Davis, and Chief Economic Advisor at the Centre for Economic and Business Research, Vicky Price. Vicky Price, is Britain broke?
No. Britain can borrow quite easily, as it's shown it was able to do throughout the whole COVID period. We borrowed £300 billion in 1 year. We're borrowing 150 nearly £1 billion over the year that is just finishing, and we'll be borrowing more in the years to come. This suggests to me that the UK can easily overcome some of the problems it has faced, but of course at a cost, as you rightly said. We have to pay interest on the debt. They're not huge amounts, actually. We shouldn't exaggerate how that 85 billion, yes, this is accrued interest, if you like, that we're going to be having to be paying over a period of time. And it does raise, indeed, the overall debt temporarily, but it's all quite manageable for the time being. But what is the problem is that individuals and households are in real trouble right now because their standard of living is declining. Inflation is as high as we have not seen, in fact, in decades, and is likely to possibly reach double-digit figures by maybe sort of May or June of this year, and maybe stay at high levels for some time. And that is a problem, of course, for most people because their wages are not keeping up with it. So that's the real issue, that we're having a population which is going to feel a real squeeze in the year ahead, and that squeeze may last for quite some time.
Well, all I care about, Vicky, is my viewers, many of whom are struggling at the moment. Energy bills going up by 50% or more. Inflation is impacting some of the most basic goods. Should the Chancellor borrow more money to help out cash-strapped Brits?
Probably yes. What's happening right now, of course, is that the government is reducing the amount of money that they have to borrow each year, as I suggested. So the idea was that we were going to be borrowing a lot less next year and a lot less the year after, and reducing the deficit. But the way that this has been achieved is by collecting more taxes. So taxes have gone up for most people, not just because of the national insurance contributions that we know are going up, of course, this financial year. The one for 22-23, but also, of course, we've seen a freezing of the tax allowances. Tax allowances are not going up over the next 4 years, which means that loads of people are coming into the higher tax brackets or even starting to pay tax for the first time. Then we have a lot of taxes on businesses. Corporation tax is going up to 23%, 25%, apologies. And also, at the same time, the employers have to pay a lot more in terms of national insurance too. And the benefit has been given to individuals just now in the spring statement, which is raising the national insurance contribution allowance, so you don't start paying it until a bit later than before. It does not apply to businesses. So businesses have not been helped either with the energy bills or on the tax front. And that's a real issue. Are they going to be able to survive? Are they going to be able to pass some of these very high costs to consumers? The likelihood is they're going to find it difficult to do so. So we've seen already that business confidence is declining. We just had the CBI, the Confederation of British Industry, data for the first quarter of 2022 showing a fall in confidence. And we're also seeing that evidence coming through retail sales and also the manufacturing sector, where again the data is suggesting that the pace of recovery that we have seen is now declining and declining quite substantially. So there are worries in terms of moving ahead. And I think, yes, to answer your question again, the Chancellor needs to do more, probably borrow more and redirect perhaps some of the money to people who really need it most.
Briefly, before I come to Jonathan Davis, is that not a race to the bottom? Is that not economic quicksand where we print more money, we get more inflation? Isn't this a trap?
There is a problem with inflation, and you've got a point there that we need to watch, and that's why interest rates are going up. But of course, interest rates are already affecting both businesses and individuals. We were quite used to very low interest rates, and that was very helpful in getting us out of the pandemic problem that we've had, and we had to have that. But at the same time, if you look at the fact that we are in a crisis and that loads of other countries, if you look across Europe, are subsidizing electricity bills a lot more than we are. They are taxing energy companies and redistributing that money. They are reducing taxes rather than increasing them right now because they perceive this to be a temporary problem. We'll get out of it, but we can only really get out of it if we also act in the right way to support the economy during it.
Jonathan Davis, is Britain broke?
Well, I was absolutely fascinated that the first sentence by Mrs. Price there was, we can borrow more and not be broke. Well, you know, I don't know what...
What a terrible moment to lose. Jonathan, hold fire, because you just pixelated for a moment and we're hanging on your every word. Could you repeat your answer? You wanted to take issue with what Vicky Price had to say about borrowing.
The first sentence was, we can borrow and not be impoverished. Well, you know, where I come from, if your government is already £2.6 thousand billion in debt, any household that's in debt, if you borrow more, how does that make you more prosperous? No, it makes you more in debt. It's a nonsense that these economists keep coming out with. Don't worry about borrowing more and more, because apparently that can improve your financial situation. Well, apart from anything, it's totally illogical. Now, also, everyone's always looking for a simple, easy solution to being broke or not. Of course we're broke. The question is, how long can they keep on spinning the plates? Well, clearly, if you look back to the 1990s, the level of debt in society has been rising exponentially. So they've been spinning the plates for 25 years, shall we say. Well, that's all fine and well, while borrowing rates have been falling for 40, 50 years. Well, I'm not saying that borrowing rates are particularly going to rise for the next 25 years, but they're certainly not going to fall any longer, because until recently, they were at all-time lows. So, of course, it's getting more expensive for the government to service debt, for companies, and indeed for households to service debt. And look where we are now. As you said earlier, Mark, as everyone knows, my goodness, home energy costs are going up 50% a year. Go to the gas station and fill up your tank. You're looking at £1.75 a litre, whereas 2 years ago, you were looking at £1 a litre. 75% increase. Everyone knows also the phrase, it's about eating or heating. Why on earth, in the 21st century, with our technology and with our brains, why on earth are people in this country having to decide about eating or heating? I'll tell you why. It's because the politicians for the last 25 years have gone through a process of impoverishing us, and now the chickens are coming home to roost. Do not say, as you did earlier, that Vladimir Putin is the reason why we've got rising inflation. No, look at the price of oil. It was $20 a barrel in April 2020. 2 years ago, it went up to $130. By the way, it's come down $30 since Russia's been in Ukraine, and it's going down. So, yes, we are broke in the sense that the chickens are coming home to roost. It's getting more and more difficult to retain a standard of living for 90+% of the population. And it's not going to get any better while the government, while the politicians continue doing what they're doing.
Vicky Price, I know you need to rush off very shortly. Great to have you on the show. What's your reaction to what Jonathan had to say, that actually further borrowing would be irresponsible, even if it is currently cheap?
I have to say I have no idea whether you can hear me properly, because I wasn't able to hear everything well. So if you can hear me, that's really good. Of course, we have to watch how much we borrow. There is no doubt about that the Chancellor has been trying to get back to some normality. You can do that when things are normal. But right now, we're not in a normal environment at all, because we have the crisis in the Ukraine and Russia. We have threats of being cut off from gas and oil coming from Russia that so many countries in Europe depend on. We have serious issues about businesses being able to get the supplies that they need to continue to operate. We have serious problems with food imports as well, and the price of food, many foodstuffs have gone up very significantly. So we are in a position where we have to act. So sitting back and saying that actually what's paramount is to get back to a situation where we borrow less every year. We're not going to reduce the stock of debt. The stock of debt is going to carry on going up. We're going to be borrowing more every year, even under the best circumstances. But right now, if we look across Europe, if you look at the US, countries are borrowing more. They have accepted that that's what they need to do right now. And they are quite concerned that if they don't do that, first of all, there would be a lot of social unrest, of course. And second, the economies will do so much worse that getting out of that problem afterwards will be even harder. So that's why one has to intervene now.
Last word.
A little bit more than perhaps the Chancellor had anticipated.
Thank you, Vicky. If you have to run, do run. It's been great to have you back on the programme again. Jonathan Davis, last word.
You know, the logic of to continue doing what we're doing, because if we don't, then there's going to be blood on the streets. Well, there's going to be blood on the streets, I'm afraid to say, because there's going to be social unrest, because there's going to be people who can't eat, people who can't heat their homes. If that doesn't create social unrest, I don't know what will. And this idea that the Chancellor's trying to do something, well, I'm sorry. These politicians have been doing it to us for the last 25 years, and there is no difference whether they're blue or red or yellow. There is no difference in their policies, in the minutiae perhaps, but their broad brush is exactly the same. And I don't get argument, just because every government says this is what we got to do, therefore we have to do it. Well, I remember in the 1980s, Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher said, no, we've got to do it differently. And by the time we got to 1990, the US economy and the UK economy were the strongest on the planet. UK economy was a beacon of light. Of strength. Everyone copied then what we had done in the 1980s. So, you know, it's a straw man argument to say everyone says it, therefore we've got to do it. Absolute nonsense. What we need to do is cut spending, slash spending, the bureaucracy, the quangos, the quasi-public sector and public sector organisations, which are funded not by my taxes, but by increased borrowing, basically to buy votes to keep the thing going so that these guys can stay in government and have a laugh at the rest of us, while Granny can't even heat her home.
My deep thanks to Jonathan Davis, who is the presenter of the Booms and Bust podcast. That's right, Booms and Busts, plural, podcast. He's also an economist and chartered financial planner. And my also sincere thanks go to the Chief Economic Advisor at the Centre for Economic and Business Research, Vicky Price. Thanks to both of you. What a fascinating conversation. What do you think? Is Britain broke? Mark at gbnews.uk. More of your selfies next. It is Selfie Sunday.